So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We hope that you have a nice lunch and time to network. We see that there are many colleagues probably still having lunch and networking, so probably they join a bit later. But nevertheless, because the program is quite packed, and after this technical workshop, there is another one. So we're gonna start being on time for your coffee break. So I would like to remind, so this is Technical Workshops 3B, is about the dual use of UAS for civil and state military operations. So my name is Maria Algar Ruiz. I am EASA Drones Program Manager, and I have the pleasure to moderate this session. And with me, I have a great group of experts, and from the civil and from the, actually more from the military, I would say, than civil this time, for a change. And this workshop is quite special. And it's special because we have not had such a workshop in EASA high-level conference in the past. So it is actually, as far as I remember, is the first time in which we have a workshop which is dedicated to this subject in EASA high-level conference or technical workshop. So hopefully we can continue this. And I'm gonna first introduce the panelists, and then we go a little bit more on the details on what we try to discuss. So for the panelists, I have with us, we have Patrick Adu. He is the Senior Military Advisor of the EASA Executive Director and EASA in general for supporting us on all matters related to civil-military collaboration. So Patrick has been working for many years in aviation in different domains and in different industries, also in the space industry. And he has led also certification projects of unmanned aircraft systems before he joined his present position at EASA, which he did in last year. And he is the perfect candidate for this type of discussions. So we have Christophe Vivier, who is the head of the Single European Sky Unit in the European Defence Agency. Of course, we cannot have a civil-military discussion and cooperation if we don't have our sister agency with us. So Christophe himself has been working in the military domain all his career. So you started as a jet pilot, military jet pilot, and you have taken on more and more leaderships and management position in the French Air Force until you have joined international activities in NATO, and now you are leading, you are the head of the Single European Sky Unit at EDA. So we have Manuel Gusemas. Actually, you are not sitting in the order, but doesn't matter, so it's okay, it's okay. So you are the head of certification and regulation departments at Thales. So Thales is obviously industry manufacturer which produce platforms and produce systems, and which is for both civil and military use. And again, long experience, so more than 25 years of experience working in Thales in different positions, aeronautical engineer as a basis, but with huge background on certification of systems. So definitively the great discussion, the great profile for this discussion. Johannes Eck, Chief Technology Officer of Schiebel. Actually, when I started working on the drones domain, I discuss always with Antonio about a Schiebel certification. So it has been really, even though I never saw your multicopter, well, this sort of helicopter, actually, you will show a picture. So you are producing them since long time, 1994, and you have been in the company. And you have long experience as well in engineering and in the design, manufacturing, and certifying unmanned aircraft systems. So we have Matthias Quandt. He's the head of business unit, products and development, and accountable manager of Defense and Space Airborne Solutions. So it's a sort of subsidiary of Airbus Defense.
Exactly.
And you are a UAS operator. So it's, although Airbus, we now produce aircraft, but here you are more as experience of UAS operator and actually performing operations and services for state operations, but also military. So, welcome. And the last but not the least, so my colleague Antonio Marchetto, he's the UAS Policy Project Manager with the Certification Directorate. But Antonio has a long experience also in industry, in the UAS industry, also in the design, manufacturing, and production, and also certification of unmanned aircraft system. So with this great panel list, so let's start the discussion. So civil-military cooperation, this is not new, I guess. So we are trying to have civil-military cooperation for many years, since I like what Christopher always said, we have one aerospace, we need to share it, and we need then to talk to each other. So this is nothing new, but in the case of UAS is a bit peculiar. The military world, you have used UASs for many years. So that's why you have all a lot of experience on UASs, so much more than I have, for sure. And this has been recognized in the EU Drones Strategy 2.0. So this was already recognized basically at the end of 2020 with the smart and sustainable mobility, and with all these policies that we have within the European Union. But it was even more visible when we started working in the drones leadership group in the European Union with different partners and other industry stakeholders that they are not around the table, but they are probably in the audience. So how we can really work together, civil and military, in order to achieve the objectives of have European industry producing platforms. They can be used for both. They can be designed, produced, certified for both without unnecessary burden. And also how we can then harmonize the operations in order to, and the operational assessments, the use cases, the authorization processes as much as we can, in order to allow the industry and operators to have more access to both type of market. In that sense, it was some long discussions, but we end up with two flagship actions in the drone strategy. So the flagship action number 15 and 16. And there is another one on the test center, but we're not going to touch upon on that. It could be a panel on itself. So, but we are going to touch upon on our discussions on two flagship actions. So the number 15 is the Commission encouraged all of us. So EASA specifically mentions EASA, EDA, and Eurocai, but it mentioned also all other actors to further align certification requirements for civil and military applications towards those set by EASA. So here start already the question marks in your head. While considering military specificities and existing military certification standards. And the second flagship actions is the Commission intend to adopt new standard scenarios. And then standard scenario, I remind to those of you who are not very familiar with the drone regulation, I think you are by now, but if you are not, a standard scenario is a specific tool, it's an annex to the 947 regulation, so it's a introductory tool in which one specific operation in the specific category is in the standard scenario, the operator can just declare their operations and they are good to go. So the Commission intends to adopt new standard scenarios for civil operations that could facilitate corresponding military use cases. As EASA, I think we need to also broaden this flagship action, and I think we should not limit ourselves only to standard scenario, but we could think about what has been called in other panels predefined risk assessments. So I'm going to start to talk myself, and I'm going to start to ask the first questions to our panelists. So I will start with you, Patrick, if it is cooperative. So we are, in EASA, we are an European Union agency for civil aviation safety. But you are a senior military advisor, so we have actually, we have high-ranking military advisor advising us. So how do you see your role and how do you see this is necessary?
Okay. I'm going to start to answer your question. Thank you, Maria, and good afternoon, everyone. So,
yes, before you go, we have a Slido. Please just go back 1 second to give people one...
right,
yeah, to just do the scan or photo. And please put your questions on the Slido. I see there are already one question, so very good. We will go to them after the first round.
Oh, okay. So, let's go. Thank you to give me the opportunity to set the scene and to explain why there is a senior military advisor in a civil European agency. So the first reason for me is because civil and military share a similar approach to risk management. We saw that in previous panels, for example, this morning. Even if we don't use sometimes the same target level of safety, we want to fly safely. And the guiding principle of EASA's approach is that of a level of requirements proportionate to the risk of the operation conducted within the framework of a necessarily system approach, including the air vector, the various ground segments, but also the existing called infrastructure, SATCOM, GNSS, or energy for the ground station or something like that, including also the skills of the remote pilot, but also other specialists. We spoke about person in command this morning. And of course, we consider also the management of the airspace. And I believe that this approach, operation-centric, is perfectly consistent with that expressed by the military, and particularly, if I can take an example, the Dutch Military Airworthiness Authority, the maxim of this authority is mission first, safety always. The second reason is because we share the same sky, and civil airspace users are more and more numerous, and now even in low altitude airspace, particularly with drones, an airspace where military operate and train, and not only them, general aviation also. And also, and unfortunately, with the present geopolitical environment, the military will also need wider airspaces to train themselves. This is known as the new normal situation for the military. The third reason for me also is because we share many aeronautical platforms. Transport or surveillance aircraft, tankers, helicopters are civil derivative or dual-use aircraft. But many private organizations are also using today civil drones, and sometimes the same one than the military for border or maritime surveillance particularly. And we have, with the military, and we saw that this morning, opposite but complementary trajectories of experience to share. For EASA, in the civil world, faced with the explosion in the number of drones, mainly for leisure purpose at the beginning, EASA had to regulate their use with a relative urgency. Based on these new vectors and their future adaptations, targeted professional applications have gradually appeared. And from now on, the new urban air mobility and drone transportation are the challenges of the near future. Instead, the military has begun to use drone systems with large unmanned aircraft that would fall into the certified category of the civilian world. But they also operate many other unmanned aircraft systems today of all sizes and in many different conditions. So it's very interesting to share our experience. 5, because we share common threats and associated challenges to cope with them and continue flying safely. Environmental threats with, for example, extreme weather changes. Cyber risk management is also becoming imperative. GNSS spoofing or jamming is increasingly encountered, and even drones themselves may constitute a threat, and countermeasures must be developed. And finally, because we share also a lot of new technology needs, like trustworthy artificial intelligence, enhanced digitalization for equipment on board, but also for equipment on the ground, human-machine interface knowledge, simulation and management methodologies, powerful, reliable, and secure data links, fuel-efficient technologies, and so on. And we share also a common risk of eviction to access these technologies. In the civil world, the recovery of a chaotic air transport situation caused by the recent health crisis is now conditioned by European citizens to a drastic reduction of its harmful effects on the environment. This leads to the fantastic but costly Clean Aviation Program and CESAR-free programs, for example, in which, be honest, some technologies related to the development of drones are, however, funded. For the military, even if the Eurodrone program is finally on track, other priorities, such as the future of combat aviation, cyber defense, but also space defense, must be funded too. The result is a risk of not being able to fund the development of all the technologies needed to secure drone systems at affordable costs. So, civil-military cooperation within EASA is reflected in the possibility given to member states to apply its basic regulation to their stealth aircraft, including drones, that are these aircraft that are initially excluded. It is also reflected in numerous cooperation arrangements with organizations representing the military airworthiness authorities, but also with the European Defence Agency, for example, as well as certification and consulting activities. Because the domain of unmanned aircraft system is more recent and not yet mature enough in both sides, it offers greater opportunities for civil-military cooperation. That's why, at least, EU encourages all the actors to further alignment of technical requirements and adequate scenarios, as you said it, Maria. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Indeed, you have said all what you are in EASA with us and what you are helping us basically to achieve all the objectives that they are in your slide, but they are also embedded in EASA basic regulation. We will come back to one point which you have said that may have a consequence or maybe have an impact on how we set equivalent or similar certification requirements or certification objectives is the safety levels. Because at the end, obviously, safety levels, and we come back to discussions, short discussion we have in the panel this morning. Safety levels will derive the objectives for assurance of a platform. And if those are not equivalent or they are not the same, the cost, and I guess you will bring that, the cost of developing is different, and it will be then a market choice. And I think this is what you have said is I think, very important point that we can discuss later. But I go now to Christophe. And for the colleagues on the technology side there, so it's video number 1 in 1 second. So Christophe, you have also experience in how to deal with different approaches for the civil and military. So more in the military, but you're working also with us in EASA for just quite some time. So you are now trying to also mediate the civil side and the military. In relation to certification, what is your view on the approaches for certification and the differences between civil and military sites or state military sites? Can you tell us?
Yes, I will indeed respond to this question. But first, if I may, I would like to say that I fully agree with what has been said by Patrick, 100%. So this is already illustrating that we are not far from each other. And we are sharing the same overall objectives. And this is also valid for certification. And I would like to recall, and because you mentioned safety and certification is linked to safety, I would like to recall that the military developed a military aviation strategy in the context of Single European Sky. And safety objective is one of the objectives. So safety is fully taken into consideration by the military. But if I may, before elaborating a little bit on this question, I would like to display a video which is making some reference to certification and also to standard scenario, as you mentioned also.
Colleagues on the IT, video number 1, please.
Military aviation is key for security and defense. Remotely piloted aircraft systems, or RPAS, have demonstrated their importance in military and civil operations, particularly for surveillance and information gathering, border control, or disaster monitoring. In order to unlock their full potential, the European Defence Agency supports member states in the safe integration of military RPAS in non-segregated airspace. A central task is to ensure coordination among all stakeholders to achieve interoperability and ensure the highest level of safety. For instance, the agency supports member states in defining the concept for air traffic integration of medium-altitude, long-endurance RPAS. EDA, together with its member states, also tackles regulatory aspects through best practices for safety requirements on cross-border movement. In the technical domain, our mission is to support research, development, and standardization activities in autonomy and artificial intelligence for emergency situations. Remote pilot stations standardization for RPAS operation into the European Air Traffic Management System, detect and avoid, and command and control data links. We also work on identifying the missing key technical enablers for airspace integration starting in 2025, and to ensure their availability using different implementation mechanisms and funding opportunities. Already in 2013, heads of state and government declared military RPAS a key capability priority. With the support of EDA, the European Air Forces are making good progress on the safe integration of large remotely piloted aircraft systems in non-segregated airspace. Civil operators will also benefit from their work.
So to complement the video, you have seen that the word safety is mentioned several times in the video. Now to come back to your question regarding certification, we are not far. The difficulty is that on the military side, there is no harmonization because some states are operating some airpass or large drones, some of them no. So there are different levels of development in terms of certification requirements and the way also the aircraft pilots and all the systems are certified. However, what we are trying to do is to harmonize the military to the maximum extent possible and on a voluntary basis, on the basis of EASA regulation. This is what we have done already for manned aviation. We developed what we are calling EMAR, European Military Airworthiness Requirements. And these requirements have been developed on the basis of EASA regulation. So just to illustrate that we are trying to converge as much as possible to the civil side. However, there is one big limitation, and I would like to mention it. It's when we are talking about authority, certification authority. And I will use a strong word, but this is the case today. It's a red line for the military to have a supranational certification authority regarding military assets. This can be done on a voluntary basis, but they don't want to be imposed a supranational certification authority. So, in a nutshell, we are not far regarding certification. We put in place many processes which are similar to the civil ones. We are using to the maximum extent possible the civil standards, and there is one limitation is when it comes to authority.
Thank you very much, Christophe. Indeed, this is obviously, so it's, as you said, the harmonization, at least for the military-specific operations part is there. So an aircraft is an aircraft, and I guess the structure is the structure. And but the authority, as you said, is at the moment. So in Europe, in civil, we have this idea is one and is applicable to all, and in the military is each state. And this will be like that as far as you can see. So this may obviously for industry, in some cases may be even better, but in some cases maybe also pose some issues. Depends. So yeah, so this will be, I guess, and I guess there are also different ways to harmonize. So we can discuss then later on, even if the authority is not one authority. So having said that, I would like to go now to the manufacturing industry, and I would like to start with Manuel. How do you see such alignment for you are producing platforms? So how do you see this flashy action? Is it something that is an opportunity, or you see more as a risk because you will need? Is something that you see more it supports your business as an industry. So you can sell more platforms, you can develop one development process. So you see, well, I cannot sell now so many different customized products. How do you see that?
No, you are talking about the flagship 15,
Exactly,
about alignment of military requirements on EASA requirements. So, no, clearly, I think this is an opportunity to obtain this kind of alignment. EASA is developing a complete regulation framework to certify UAS. And for Thales, we will see with the video, we are developing a system that will be able to address both use cases, civil and military, and state operations. So, and we are discussing both with civil authorities like EASA and the French National Aviation Authority, and as well military authorities, in particular in France. And as far we will be able to align the approach for the certification on the civil framework that EASA is developing, I think it will be better for industry and to avoid the duplication and burden to get certified our platforms. So yes, for Thales, I see as an opportunity.
As an opportunity.
But this is the experience of Thales because we are developing a system, and from the beginning we are discussing with both authorities, civilian and military. I can imagine that for other manufacturers, maybe starting with the military authorities, maybe could be different if they need to align at a later stage with the civil requirements. Or it depends on the situation, on the cases, I think.
Thank you very much, Manuel. You will display your video, and then we ask Johannes what he thinks about this approach, whether it's an opportunity or an inconvenience for Schiebel. So, please. Video number 2, please. There's a...
The sky. The sky seen from Earth. Earth seen from the sky. Drones are ushering in a new era enabling missions in many fields of activity that are both more efficient and less CO2 consuming. But these drones still have to operate safely and in compliance with regulations, including in inhabited areas or over long distances. At Thales, our expertise in aviation safety, avionics, and air traffic management is opening the skies to this revolution with safe and secure solutions for even the most complex drone operations. Flying at low altitude and sharing airspace with civil air traffic is now possible with the UAS 100 system. Developed in partnership with EASA Aviation, the drone aircraft has been designed to meet the highest level of safety requirements. To monitor, to detect, and to alert are the 3 missions of this drone, combining Thales's capacity for innovation and expertise. Capable of operating within a radius of 100 to 300 kilometers, the UAS 100 can safely fly over inhabited areas and carry out a wide variety of civilian and government missions. Surveillance of infrastructure or border areas, detection of victims or threats, fire alerts. It can take off and land from tight and unprepared spaces, with a total modular payload of up to 10 kilograms to carry out its missions. The triplex architecture of its avionics and its hybrid engine provide it with reliability, stealth, and autonomy with minimal environmental impact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we go to Johannes. So Johannes, how do you see also as an UAS manufacturer? So do you see the flagship number 15 more as an opportunity for Schiebel or more as an inconvenience?
Definitely is an opportunity. So we as a manufacturer, and we can show with a couple of slides what we are doing since many years.
Remote control.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for having the opportunity. Just a couple of words, a couple of seconds where we are coming from. So, we are Vienna, Austria-based. a drone manufacturer, and we are doing development of the system. So we are not a system integrator putting pieces and parts together. So we are really developing from scratch the drone. So that means we are doing the electronics, we are doing the flight control, we are doing the engine. It's a one-key engine in our case. We are doing the drivetrain, we are doing the rotor blades, we are doing the gearboxes, we are doing the fuselage with the fuel tank, the patent-wise fuel tank and structure. So we're really very deep in the development of the UAV system, and yeah, since many years. So it started actually. Schiebel was coming from a mine detecting company, so we are doing mine detectors in the 70s and 80s. And in the 90s, the US government approached us, could we do mine detections from the air? And that's where actually the thing started, trying to combine mine detection from the air, but nobody wants to fly a manned aircraft above the minefield, so that was the difficult situation, and that's where it all started, where we began developing from scratch UAV systems. We are 200 kilograms and about 3 meters in dimension, and with a payload capacity in the range of 90 kilograms. So a customer can use 90 kilograms for fuel and payloads. And as you can see here, I try not to spend too many time, we are a multi-sensor platform. So that's the thing which we want to provide to the customer. It's not a single sensor system. We are having capacity, as I said, up to 90 kilograms, trading off between fuel and sensor. So we want to provide as much as data as possible to the customer. And actually, that's what the customer buys at the end. So he's buying the capability of getting data from any point in the range of the data link. What's the experience? And there we can start seeing it's a dual-use experience from the very, very beginning on. So anything, yeah, you can read yourself, between monitoring, observation, taking care, finding people in the Mediterranean Sea, finding all kinds of, collecting all kinds of data. So it's a big, big variety of civil and military applications, whereas we definitely have to say we are a dual-use product from the very, very beginning, and that was company philosophy from the very beginning. So dual-use on the legal framework, so we are dual-use good on the one side, but also a dual-use good, now in our understanding, for military and for the civil application. And from the very beginning, we tried to merge those applications into one design. So our design is one design, and we want to fulfill the military and the civil requirements with one single design as good as we can. Sometimes it's not possible, we're aware of that. There are specific requirements where you have to do some add-ons. But basically, we definitely try to merge these dual-use requirements in one aircraft design up front and all the way down to also running through certification and getting operational permissions. Again, a lot of examples and also examples for standard CONOPS which we could provide input. So these are our CONOPS and operations which are used on a daily basis by our aircrafts. So we are far having more than 100,000 recorded flight hours. Customers do not share many of the flight hours because of non-disclosure agreements, so we assume there are definitely a couple of 100,000 flight hours on the aircraft system up to now in all those different areas of operation. And we definitely see, to answer your question now after a couple of minutes, yes, that's a real big opportunity. So since the very beginning, we tried to merge it with one design to fulfill both requirements. What we see is it's not really possible up to now, or just very few exceptions. It's possible because at the end, when you deliver to the customer, you have to take care, is it a military application or is it a civil application? And there, where it starts dividing into complete different processes, into complete different rules, into complete different efforts to get the thing up and running at the end customer where they really want to use it. And our wish is, of course, trying to harmonize. And the best would be, yes, based on the way which we are going at the moment. Yeah. So based on the SORA process and the EU regulations which are out, if that could be taken over or shared and getting down to the legal framework on a daily basis, that would be our Easter wish or Christmas wish, whatever is coming in the next months. That definitely would help us a lot and save a lot of money at the end to the customer, because somebody needs to pay when the thing is getting out to the customer, and that would be a real efficient way to drive our original idea, having one design which is used by both military and civil customers without major modification on the core system itself. And yeah, we are aware, of course, on the sensor side and on the upper framework there might be different sensors and things to be adapted. But the core system and the core certification, that would be definitely helping if that could be harmonized. And just to mention also on the frequency side, it's not part of this, but same story on the frequency side. That would definitely help a lot too.
Thank you very much, Johannes, for the insight. Indeed, you have mentioned one topic, which I guess we can go into also discussion with Christoph and Antonio in a second, is the SORA. And obviously, one thing is applying the certification of the platform. Another thing is obviously it depends on the approach followed, but in the civil world, we follow the approach on the specific category, which a lot of operations can be done in the specific category without going even in the certified category. Many of these applications, depending on the final sale, if I may say, and Antonio can talk much longer than me on that, could be down in the specific category. And the question is, and this is also linked to standard scenario. Standard scenario predefined risk assessment are based on application of SORA. But if the SORA is not harmonized or recognized by the military authorities, the end result of the standard scenario will be hardly recognizable. So it's all at the end related to harmonize or have equivalence and to recognize the end result of the assessment. So I think it's your wish for Easter. I don't know, for Easter we have 1 week to go, might be difficult.
But it's coming again. So.
For next Easter,
it's
maybe.
repeating.
Yeah, how will you see for next Easter how we go? So, now we go to the view of an operator. So Matthias, and I think we have jumped to use cases and standard scenarios and application of SORA. I think you are very knowledgeable on application of SORA and how to construct the file for submitting to the authorities, because in your cases sometimes your customers and are in different regulatory frameworks, but they are depending on the mission, they may fall into the civil environment. So there may be a sort of opt-in, if I may say. So what is your view? How do you see this is helping you as a provider of UAS operations and services in your daily work, or will be more a constraint? And what, in your opinion, will be the use cases that will be ideally to go into sort of predefined risk assessment and standard scenario approach? Can you give us an insight on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So first of all, I would like to mention previous panel here with respect to the remote pilot and command. It was a quite interesting discussion we had, and it's exactly showing the challenges we have also for SORA. So, but in the past, we made our first experiences over more than 10 years with another customer. It's a military customer. And it was mentioned before as well that we had a shared operation. So we learned quite a lot together, and this was quite helpful for the SORA process. And together with the national authorities, we decided for a state operation to use Zora as well. So our experience was quite good with respect to Zora. So it's, in general, I would say it's quite helpful. Considering the next challenges, use cases, we had a lot of discussions before as well about controlled and uncontrolled airspaces. So airspace echo and golf is the next challenge. So from our point of view, we should try to find a use case considering exactly this airspace, echo and golf. So how to handle it. Talking about detect and avoid system is also a challenge. Yeah, so if we are talking about controlled airspaces, using the existing equipment, ADS-B, transponder, TCAS, and so on, I think it's not that crucial. But operating in airspace, echo, and golf, that's the challenge. Considering, once again, the state operations, Coast Guard, search and rescue missions, which we performed as well in Greece. So it's always a risk assessment, how to handle this operation in general in such kind of airspace. So that would be, from our point of view, a really specific use case to be implemented.
Search and rescue outside the EASA basic regulation, but I think
Yeah.
we can obviously work. Search is more a surveillance function, and rescue could be transport of passengers. But okay, we can see how it goes. But yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in general, SORA is applicable from our point of view for state operation as well. So there is an opportunity to use also military experience, so Stana 4671 for certification purposes, for instance. So we achieved last year together with the German Military Aviation Authority to achieve the, or not the very first, but one of the first type certification of a mail system. So it was a great achievement from our point of view, but this is a good example how to implement already existing international standards, agreed, as well into European regulation.
And it has been recognized by your, let's say, the authorities of your customers, so it has been recognized as acceptable.
Yeah.
So there's a good practice here.
It is.
So that gives us straight away to Antonio. So you have a lot of experience on certification and trying to look the equivalence to the Stana, to our special condition like UAS certification. So I think what you could answer, I guess, is three questions. So first, how do you see the approaches for certification for civil military? So you are now more working on the civil approach since quite some time, and basically you are drafting those special conditions with the support of the industry and EASA experts. And how do you see industry standardization support and benefit the application of both civil, state, military stakeholders?
Thank you, Maria. Perhaps I can
you can
help me with some slides.
I think, Matthias, we have some slides from you, but okay.
Sorry for that. So should I press here?
Yeah, press, please. Then back. Okay,
I proceed.
That was your explanations. And now,
Yes, here we are. So, thank you, Maria. And in fact, yes, you see the title of this few slides, Stana in support of means of compliance special condition light UAS. Special condition light UAS is our basis for not only certification, but design verification, because we have this proportional approach in the specific category that Maria mentioned, where we cannot apply certification, Part 21 process as it is in all categories of risk. And this, in fact, recalls me also the first slides showed by Patrick, which I fully agree upon, and it started with common safety objective. And in fact, I think we have, in terms, and sorry if I begin to go into the quantitative and to the detail, but talking of airworthiness, we are in particular talking of the ground risk, and talking of this safety objective, which apparently drives both of us, which is 10 to the minus 6 probability of fatalities on ground per flight hour, which is something derived from general aviation historically. Now, the fact is, that is the safety objective, and it can be common, but at the moment in which then you begin to see, okay, now we have to derive the airworthiness requirement for this platform, this UAS and the other, then you need to assess its risk. And so you have to have possibly a common way to assess the risk, the same view, the same assessment of the risk. To give you an example, we are discussing with the FAA, Transport Canada and the Brazilian authority in this drone quad that we have every couple of weeks. And so we built a very complex tables of comparison of our regulatory framework, but the very basis is, are we measuring risk in the same way? And perhaps it can seem a detail, but we know that our approach is, okay, how big is the crash area of the drone, and what is the population density? But even if you just speak of the two basic things, it's not for granted that we have the same view. Take, for example, our AMC, the current AMC taken from the SORA 2.0, which is quite qualitative on the population density, sparsely populated assemblies of people. If we look at it through member states, it's not easy to interpret at the same way, because it's not in that case EASA intervenes. EASA is providing some guidance material, but then each member state interprets where it is sparsely, where it is populated, and where it is assemblies of people. So you understand there is already a topic of harmonization there. What would be in the military? Not sure, but recommendation is we need to discuss this thing. We need to really see with more clarity. And even going to the crash area, we have seen some differences, and so hopefully we are going in the same direction. We have a certain way of assessing it, and we need to. I don't say that we need to have the same way, but we need to see with clarity if there are differences, very clearly, so that at the moment in which then we discuss over the transferability of the product, the transferability of the product is linked to a CONOPS. Otherwise, you cannot transfer it. So this as an introduction. Coming back to the special condition that, in fact, we use in the medium risk of the specific category for Sale 3, especially Sale 4 now, because Sale 3 is transitioning to our national aviation authorities in terms of authorization also of the design. And then we use it for the Sale 5 and 6, so-called high risk. It's a very high level special condition, valid under 600 kilograms, any UAS design. 600 kilograms is not even a strong threshold, can be discussed. Not for transfer of people. Of course, it's very high level because if you have to use it from a few kilograms UAS to 600 kilograms, and for any design, it cannot certainly be prescriptive. So the means of compliance is, of course, therefore a very important topic, because being high level, you absolutely need means of compliance, and we are working on it. We worked on it first with a project which was called Airworthiness Drone a couple of years ago, which provided some initial output in terms of assessment of standards. Then we have EuroCAE, Working Group 105, Subgroup 4, which is working on establishing means of compliance on some priority areas of the special condition. And then we have a new project, Shepherd, so-called, which is the project which is the follow-up of the airworthiness drones, so to say. With all of these, we are creating a means of compliance basis for the special condition, complementing with effort from EASA to provide means of compliance for mitigation means, for containment, and we are taking care also of system and equipment, the means of compliance 2510, which is very important. Now, what can be used also to provide means of compliance is more prescriptive certification specification. In this case, if you take the Stana, this is an example of where our approach can get together, and we can have really some good synergy. As you can use certification specification which are more restrictive, civil one, but you can use also the Stana. And we are in this period in which we don't have an established basis published. Every application we have, design verification or type certification, needs to come with a proposal of means of compliance. Regarding Stana, we have performed some analysis. So this is, in a way, our contribute that we have provided to this topic. And you see, we have analyzed basically two Stana, the second and the third that you see there. 4702 rotary wing from 150 kilograms to 3 tons, and 4703. The 4671 it's an analysis which is ongoing. We are doing this in the certification directorate. There are some experts involved. And this Stana as civil reference specification that you see there, the first, the 4702 is CS27, and 4703 is very light aircraft and the CS22. What we see is that quite obviously, the 4702 seems to be more oriented because of the maximum takeoff mass cover to the high risk. So I'm talking of the SAIL 5 and SAIL 6. So could be quite adapted to that, to cover the high risk. While the last one could be potentially usable for a SAIL 4. In the last column, you see what we are complementing with. And for the 4702, you can consider mitigation means. We have a means of compliance mitigation means. Perhaps also in the military, I'm not sure, but perhaps also in the risk assessment that has been used for the military, there is the possibility to act on the ground risk with mitigation means. So we have this means of compliance which is published, and it's been work with the National Aviation Authority in the frame of the airworthiness task force. And I have to say that it has been, this work together with the National Aviation Authority has really added in sense of new elements and new views that have been taken. We are to the first one, which we published only as EASA, and that was concerning the medium and the high risk. This is focused on the medium risk, but provides really a good frame for applicant, operator, or manufacturers to apply and to know really which elements to look for and to present. So, in concluding, we are really open to evaluate means of compliance for special condition light UAS, which are based on Stana or are also based on Stana. They can be mixed Stana, certification specification, consensus standards. And we are also open in case there are projects which have already a military type certificate to consider already as viable substantiation carried out for the military type certificate. So with all of these, I think this could be really a good help in order to proceed to that with some practical actions to this harmonization that we need so much.
Thank you very much, Antonio. So you said that the last, actually, I will start with the last point. So that we are opening EASA to consider if there evidence or flight test results or sort of evidence done under the military certification to try to take them and take credit of them in the certification that will be done by that. But for doing that credit, so we need to be able to assess, I guess, the basis based on which. So if you said, okay, but STANAGs or the airworthiness requirements are not mandatory on military authorities, so they could eventually deviate. How do you see this work down?
Our worthiness requirement, the military worthiness requirement, if you take them, they are quite high level and pointing to a certification element of the certification specification and STANAG, in fact, in terms of possible means of compliance. So eventually, it's a world that converge. Because also in our approach, we have the special condition light UAS, which is the high level requirement, and then we are looking for means of compliance to attach to the special condition. So I think that is feasible. I don't see big issues in that. I would really recommend, so to say, that we have the same way to assess the risk, and that we check that. Because that is the opening, the opening point to go then and therefore say, okay, so for this product, actually we can use this kind of standards in a common way. But if we have two different ways to assess the risk of an operation, then we actually don't know where we are. Are we in the SAIL 3? Are we in the SAIL 5? For example, we had comments for the Part 21 amendment that we did for the certified category that were focused on having an approach which is not, let's say, as ours, of having the control unit, the command unit, in Part 21 certified. But then, would that be a comment that is applicable for any category of risk? Or are we talking of low category of risk? And for higher category risk, is it still valid? So you see, we are risk-based, and we cannot forget that we are risk-based. We need to start from this comparing the risk and the way we assess the risk.
Is it the case in the military certification approach for UAS? Is always risk-based? So like starting from CONOPS, it's the same?
I think Patrick is much more expert than me to
Patrick,
explain
to us.
But if I may to complement, and I think we are on the same line. On the military side, we are obviously open to improve. What we would like to avoid is to jeopardize what has been done so far. We are using drones since years, and we developed STANAG, we developed certification process, so we are fully ready to share this with you, to work together, and in order to see, if possible, to develop something in common. If you are integrating military specificities from the outset in your work, at the end of the day, we will maximize the chance that the military will use the civil regulation on a voluntary basis, once again. But maybe
Patrick
will have a different perspective or a different view.
No, not really. I'm not really different perspective. It's quite difficult for me to take my previous hat because I was the French military, I was in authority before. Of course, for certified aircraft, we use the same methodology in France and then the EASA one. So we use the 46771 Stana as the basis as an acceptable mean of compliance, because what you need to have in mind that we have very few new unmanned aircraft systems. Most of them were existing system, so they were not designed with the Stana. So you can assess their safety using the Stana as an acceptable mean of compliance, but from the beginning, they were not designed with the requirements. So it was quite difficult. Now, with the new project and programs, yes, the certification basis is established from the beginning. So the demonstration of the safety of the unmanned aircraft system is considered from the beginning, and then the Stana can be used as a part of or entirely the certification basis from the beginning. And it's the way I think the military are working today.
So interesting approaches. You said that there are no many new UASs for purely military applications. I guess this for the state applications is a different, but it will be very similar on the certification path. I exactly don't know this time. Before we have 29 minutes and now we have 3. So I don't know. It just went very fast. No? It's me? Or?
Indeed.
Let's take a few questions because at the end is a technical workshop, and I think what you like the most is the interaction. So let's take the first one. How are military UAVs authorized? Are they also conducting, so in the authorization process are also based on SORA? Who can take that one? Christophe, and maybe I think you, Matthias?
Yeah. Okay, as mentioned before already, we made our experience with the Military Aviation Authority. So 10 years or more ago, SORA wasn't applicable so far. So we defined a way to perform a risk assessment, and this kind of risk assessment was the basis to provide a flight authorization for military purposes. In addition, we had, of course, our remote pilots, which are also licensed pilots. So they all have a commercial pilot license, which was the basis to entitle them to operate an unmanned system as well. In addition, they performed their type training on the unmanned system as well, a couple of months. So it's, let's say, it's a kind of common practice until now. Now we have some ruling available. So as mentioned before, from your side already, Stana 4671, from our point and experience, it's a quite good one to have something as basis and to establish a new civil regulation. But 10 years ago, we hadn't something in hand to follow, and nowadays we have something. Yeah, so, but existing UAVs is the issue, let's say.
Thank you very much. Mathieu, Christophe, you want to complement?
Yes, to complement a little bit. So military UAVs, as authorized certified, as I said, there is already a process in place. There is also a military aviation authority, which are in charge of that, and there is a certification authority. Patrick was one with his former hat. So it's done similarly to the civil side, but it's done at national level. Now, regarding SORA, I would like to say a few words on SORA, because this is an interesting topic which has been mentioned several times. The military now are developing
let's call it a mild SORA, because they are much more in favor of a quantitative risk assessment methodology rather than a qualitative. This is why they are developing a different methodology rather than SORA. But I understood that SORA is also evolving. So I think by working together, maybe the right position of the cursor is in between. So by working together, maybe we will find one day a risk assessment methodology which will be fit for military and civil purpose. This is why we need to work together, and this is a good example.
So, if I may understand, also we need to start from the beginning. It's also, is this classification is open, specific, certified, also in the military recognized, and therefore also in the specific category is SORA or any other methodology, more quantitative based, perhaps for ground risk, I don't know, recognizable as the let's say, as the basis of the authorization?
It's recognized, yes and no, because once again, at the beginning, we had a different classification when we start to operate drones. So now we are also trying to evolve. But this is what I said. This is why it's important to include the military from the outset to not jeopardize what has been done so far.
Yeah.
Anyone else wants to comment?
To complement what Christophe was saying, in Thales, when discussing with the aerospace authorities, we see that yes, the intent is to go toward the same approach like EASA with the three category of operation, but for sure they need some adaptations in the risk assessment methodology because the purpose of the operation is different, and for sure there are some needs for adaptation. And one example, for example, is to the notion of people involved in the operation. So the definition of people involved may be different in the civil context and military context. For instance, the people that are the objective of the mission of the flight for surveillance, for instance, will not be considered as involved in operation in the civil world, but in the military operation, that may be considered as involved because they are the purpose of the mission. So this is an example of light differences that we may have in the approach that can be with some impact after in the outcome of the risk assessment and the requirements that will be applied for the design of the solutions.
Thank you very much for the view. Let's take 2 more questions because it seems that it's gone. I don't know, I lost 20 minutes in 2 seconds, so I don't know how it went. Should civil operations be prepared for jamming and spoofing, Patrick? I think you have spoken about this threat, and how do you see this?
My answer is yes. Yes, you need to be prepared. But it's not a technical requirement for an unmanned aircraft system to be resilient to spoofing and jamming of GNSS signal today. That's why the first thing you can do, because EASA is also managing what we call conflict zones. And in these conflict zones, we have the map of the areas where you have a lot of spoofing and jamming of GNSS. So you can have access to the platform in which you have this information, and it's not only for the unmanned aircraft system. So the operator has to choose if you want to operate where there is spoofing and jamming or not. And if then you decide to operate in an area where there is spoofing and jamming, so it's another reason to cooperate with the military. They use quite frequently, they operate their aircraft quite frequently in areas where they are spoofing and jamming, and they already developed some solution to be very more resilient than the civil aviation to this kind of threats. Okay, it's a very good reason, one more, to cooperate between civil and military.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And let's take the last one before concluding. So, non-military state aircraft operations, police, firefighting, or search and rescue need to be dynamic, spontaneous. They need to be dynamic, spontaneous, and take into account the risk balance. Is SORA really the good approach? Who wants to answer that? Can we apply a SORA before going with the police drone for a criminal?
Is
Or how we do that, Antonio?
SORA sufficiently dynamic?
Flexible.
How do we do that?
Well, I think that for the being dynamic, an element in this direction would be when we will be able to assess, because it's an assessment of risk, when we will be able to assess in real time the population on ground and how it moves, because we are also thinking about that with Natale in particular. And that would be really a way to make it a dynamic assessment of risk. Perhaps the use space is going to help us in that. I don't know, Maria. But it's not yet there. But we are looking at making it sufficiently dynamic.
Anyone else want to say something? I think
maybe to complete the answer of Antonio, because I was also responsible for state aircraft at that time. In these scenarios, we have 80–90% of the environment which is always the same. So we can apply SORA for this environment. And you have to adapt your operation, your state operation, only for the 10 or 20%, yes, which are very different. But we can capitalize on the 80 or 90% of the environment, which is always the same. So we can begin with that. So I think SORA is a good tool.
So it's calling for the standard scenario.
Even if the answer is not complete, but
I think Johannes, you want to say something?
For example, we have one operation out there, or a customer has an operation out there where he is, of course, working according to the CONOPS and the SORA process, and the pilot is using the sensor to evaluate if, for example, when he needs to cross the highway, in this case he needs also to cross a beach where there could be one person, or it could be 1,000 persons just demonstrating for something, we don't know. He has to use the sensor to evaluate, is he flying within his CONOPS or not, and according to the situation, he needs to react and probably turn around and come back, or he's allowed to continue his flight operation. And that's daily business and works very good.
Thank you very much, dear panelists. I think we exceeded time. I don't know, we lost 20 minutes somewhere. Oh, the clock was frozen and then all of a sudden it was working. What we can conclude is we are in the good path to achieve the objectives of the flagship actions. A lot of things are already done. There is a lot of bases out there. And the key word seems to be always the same: collaboration, communication, and understanding of each other's, what we mean with the words and the expression. So I think this seems to be a good conclusion for this panel. I would like that we give a big applause to the panelists. And thank you very much for your contributions. Also those online, I keep forgetting them. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy your coffee break.